challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Samuel. Here with me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, and that means it is now 10 o'clock East Coast time in the United States of America, which means that it is time for our weekly joint live stream, which means everybody has to stop doing whatever they're doing, stop feeling sorry for themselves, saying how bad life is or anything, just for a little while, forget about how bad life is, focus
And
on
maybe check your bank account. Maybe you can spare a few bucks for this podcast.
exactly. If you've got something in the bank account, then just simply hand everything over. Just don't even think about twice about
Don't
it.
hesitate. Don't hesitate.
Exactly. Yeah, your nest egg. Give the hand over the nest egg.
George. Something a little bit like George Santos there.
Like George Santos. Exactly. So, Peter, on Friday night, you were out on the town, out doing I don't know what, but why don't you tell us what you were up to on Friday night?
On Friday night, I was in the Bolshoi Theater, which is one of the most extraordinary buildings in the world. It's unbelievably beautiful. I like ornate things. I like very classical things. And that's where RT held its gala 20th anniversary party. Okay. It was, to say it was well attended is an understatement. I mean, I got messages hours later. Peter, where are you? I'm in Moscow. I wish they had written me that they were coming
Right.
beforehand, because there were so many people. You just got lost in it was a sea of people everywhere,
Right.
in the buffet,
Hmm.
in the hall itself, which is vast.
Hmm.
Okay. So I was very honored to have a second seat in the huge hall. And I took some pictures. I looked back and I was trying to identify people, but there's so many people, it's hard to focus your attention on any individual.
Right.
But it was well attended. A lot of people came. I think a lot of people were quite satisfied. It was very much focused on foreign guests, I have to say. So there were a lot of people. A lot of people like your program, been watching you for 20 years. I was not. It was nice. I appreciate it.
Hmm.
I saw Judge Napolitano was there. Scott Ritter was there. Larry Johnson was there, but I didn't see him. He could
Hmm.
have been sitting 3 rows behind me, and I didn't
Right.
see him. That's the way
Right.
it was.
Yes.
Um, a lot of foreign dignitaries were there. I don't know. I'm sure there were other festivities for VIPs. I wasn't one of them. Okay, I'm an employee. Okay, you got to treat guests
A
properly.
humble employee. Okay.
A humble
So,
employee.
and the President Putin attended and delivered a rather lengthy speech. I mean, a speech which was just surprisingly long. I kind of assumed he'd do just a pro forma.
Yeah, because he lives next door.
Yeah, yeah. So it was a surprising. What did you think of his speech?
I thought it was, again, there are very few people, leaders in the world like this. I mean, for those of us that work at RT, I'm one of the original employees. It's a huge part of my life, and to see a head of state come and congratulate us and promote us, praise us, it was really quite touching, I have to say, and it was quite meaningful. I know it's on the Kremlin website. I don't know if RT reproduced it, but it talks a lot about the world that we live in today, about narratives and the importance of truth, and not being afraid to be different. And he chronicled the woes that we've gone through, the censorship from the free speech West, how much, and then all of the travails about the banking, and it's very difficult for, at least after the initial sanction shock, it was difficult for us to keep maintain ongoing concern, but we've all overcome all of that.
Well,
And of course, he praised Margarita Samanion when she was given the job at such a young age. I think she was 23,
I think
and a lot of
25.
people,
Yeah.
yeah, they didn't take her very seriously. They're like, who does she, who's running her, and all that. And I
Mhm.
just said, in the early days, I had a lot more contact with her. I mean, now it's a huge organization. I said, she's the boss, and she makes sure everyone knows that she's the boss. So
Now,
that was
the thing, now the
amazing.
thing is, all right. Now the thing is that RT has kind of been banned from Europe. I mean, just basically banned. You can't even get RT. You can get it if you have VPN, but other than that, you can't get it on the internet. Now, um, uh, the Russians promised to retaliate for the treatment of RT. Has there been any kind of retaliation?
Yeah, I think that like the number of visas that are issued to foreign, I mean, one of my complaints is that when I look at the vast array of media, they very rarely have someone in Moscow. But then maybe the foreign ministry what didn't make it very easy for them to be that's the boomerang effect right
Right.
there. Um, but no, I mean I don't hear about harassment of the people that come here and report. I know that Al Jazeera has a presence here. I think their coverage is abominable, to be
Right, but
perfect.
everyone has a presence. I mean, the BBC has a presence. I mean,
Yeah,
ITV
the
has a
Steve
presence. Sky.
Rosenberg is
So
good.
I haven't seen the any kind of retaliation, preventing BBC from. I mean, well, this is what it was. RT, you can't get RT now. Are RT reporters permitted to do their jobs in
Oh,
European countries?
a lot of harassment. Yeah, visa revoking of visas, not allowing them to go to certain events. We had a correspondent, our full time correspondent in South Africa, and she was invited to a free speech. Pro journalism conference in Ukraine, and she was blocked.
Right.
I mean, the irony of all of it. But no, they no, there is all kinds of harassment. Yeah, it's the height of hypocrisy. Okay, they're
Right.
very
But you
hypocritical.
see, if that's the case, if that is the case, that let's say an RT reporter is unable to attend, say, Prime Minister's news conference, then I don't see why a BBC reporter should be allowed
Well,
to ask questions from the Russian president.
I don't make the rules, George. Okay, that's
All
all I
right,
can. That's all.
now
No, at the end of the day, it works to our advantage. Okay, it does. Okay, because I mean, Putin's speech that night is emblematic of how he approaches the world. I mean, you can disagree with us, explain why, and we'll explain our position. That's what we do. Is that okay? You don't like it? Let me explain to you. Okay. And maybe take some of the blinders off of your eyes. See, that's the advantage that RT has because they don't have anything really to hide that I know of. I mean, it just, the unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. Well, we don't phrase it that way because we see it in a different way, and I explain to you why, and quite calmly, okay, without slogans, okay,
right,
without historical prejudices and all of that. And that's one of the frustrations. I mean, it's banned in Europe, but the Europeans still respond to what RT says.
right, right. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's just a little difficult to get it. I mean, you basically, got to have the
Well, I
VPN.
mean, everyone that patted me in the back, I watch you on VPNs,
Right,
okay?
right, right.
And as far as I know, I mean, I'm not a technical person, but VPNs, I think, really became a great fashion because of the censorship. People know how to use them, and I mean, I use two VPNs that are absolutely free. See, when I watch a podcast on YouTube, I have to watch it through a VPN. Okay. And
Mhm.
some of the VPNs are better than others because for some, a lot of times they'll just freeze up and you have to relog in and really kind of irritating. But I've gotten used to it. I mean, I never would have thought that I got used to watching YouTube on my phone. Okay.
Right. So, speaking of reporters and presidents and fake news, President Zelensky, and we talked at great length yesterday about Zelensky's visit to the White House on Friday, but Zelensky spoke to NBC over the weekend, and the obsequiousness of the NBC host, Kristen Walker, was quite revealing. So let's just take a look at a little bit from this interview. Um, so this is just the beginning.
President Zelensky, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here on an historic day.
Thank you.
We call it Meet the Depressed.
We really appreciate it. Let's dive right
So we've now had 3 obsequious, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I mean, all right, he's there. How many times are you going to phone on him? So, then the first question is, of course, about your tomahawks.
into your meeting with President Trump. What was your biggest takeaway from your meeting with President Trump?
Yes, it was productive meeting, quite long meeting, more than 2 hours. We spoke about everything, and of course about.
Can you stop it, George? When the first thing out the gate, it was a long meeting. Okay,
Yes.
There wasn't much substance there. It was long.
It was long.
You have a very productive, substantive meeting. You're not aware of the time. Okay, so
That's right. It wasn't, and there was no joint presser afterwards, and you can see he's not at all happy. You just see from his demeanor, very, very unhappy. And as this interview goes on, his English is really deteriorating. He's almost incapable towards the end of even speaking English.
Negotiations, yes, political negotiation. Of course, all of us, all our country will wait for diplomacy. We want to stop this war. We want to stop Putin. And of course, we count on President Trump, on the United States and European allies with this pressure on him. We spoke about air defense and long range. And be honest with you, I have understanding that we can move forward further with air defense, and with long range, our teams will work still. We don't have, this clear understanding for today.
So no results. Okay, go ahead.
No.
Just to be very clear, your long range, you're talking about your request for those Tomahawk missiles. Did President Trump give you any assurances that the United States will give Ukraine Tomahawk missiles?
First of all, we need Tomahawk, and when we speak about long range, people have to understand. We use thousands of long range drones, Ukrainian production, on military goals. But Russia uses not only drones of Iranian production, they use and also their production. Be honest, they have their drones, but also they use missiles of Russian productions and missiles long range of North Korea production. It's very difficult to operate with Ukrainian drones. We need long range Tomahawks and similar. United States has similar things. We need it for mixed using, like Russia uses. It's understandable how it works. So our teams work on it, I said, and I'm honest. It's good that President Trump didn't say no, but for today, didn't say yes.
He didn't say yes to Tomahawk missiles.
Look what she said. He didn't say yes to Tomahawk missile. Oh no!
Oh my God! Oh my God! That woman, get the caffeine out of her. She hasn't blinked her eyes yet. Okay.
He didn't say. It's like he didn't say no to Tomahawk.
Oh no! I'm sorry. Is she? Is she a TV host or his lawyer?
Well, it's very hard to tell. There's another bit where it goes on a little bit. Let's see.
Difficult part of negotiations. Are you now willing to negotiate some territory, to give up some of Ukraine's territory?
Give up some Ukraine's territory. Give up some Ukraine.
This is like an SNL skit. Keep going.
In order to end this war, Mr. President?
I understand the signal and message from President. A public message, yes. He published after our meeting, yes, as I understand.
After your meeting.
So I understand that we have to finish this war and begin this, finishing from the place where soldiers stay, from the contact line, as I understood correctly. Yes, I agree that if we want to stop this war and to go to peace negotiations, to urgently and in diplomatic way, we need to stay where we stay.
Okay, George, can you pause it for a second?
Mm-hmm.
For everyone, for everyone's information, Zelensky pushed through a law where no Ukrainian government is allowed to negotiate with the Russians. Okay, so
That's right. Yes, it
okay,
is very funny.
I
Yeah,
don't
go.
usually look at the comments. 3 years later, Russia still can't take Ukraine. They don't want to take Ukraine. I mean,
Right.
watch our video from yesterday, or maybe watch the last 3 years.
It's
Okay,
last exactly.
okay,
That's exactly
because
right.
what the goal is, and there are people that have frustration with it, but the goal is, and it's very clear, even to non-military people, it is to demolish Ukraine's military capacity, not to take their land.
Right.
No, it's to destroy their capacity. And for 8 years before this part of the conflict started, Ukraine was being NATOized. It had NATO weapons, NATO technology, NATO intelligence. So
Mhm.
I get a little frustrated. Well, why isn't it happening faster? They're destroying their military. That is the goal. It is not to take land. Russia has, well, it's the biggest country in the world. It doesn't need
Biggest
much.
territory in the world. Yeah, that's right. Um, and
Well, what do you think, George? This was scheduled as a victory lap, but he didn't get the victory lap, but he still had to show up.
it's good. Yeah, I mean, yes, I'm sure. I'm sure it was scheduled well ahead of time, but they kind of realize this has been a somewhat disappointing visit, and so she's there commiserating with him. What can I do to help? Can I
I'm surprised she doesn't have a tissue there. Can you
Yeah,
want tissue?
exactly. Yeah.
They need more pressure and then more ultimatums. Again, it's how Putin see this war end.
You take me to my next question because President Trump says he will meet with President Putin for a second summit in Budapest in the next couple of weeks. President Trump says he thinks President Putin does want to end this war. He just said that. Do you think President Putin will ever be serious about peace?
Notice how she says he wants to end the war. Do you think he's ever serious about peace? Nice the way you've reformulated the issues.
Look at his face.
Yes, yes, exactly. That face is not happy. No, he was not. He was not a. He was not a happy camper. Um, and the extent of his unhappiness was disclosed in an article in the Financial Times,
Oh, yeah.
which really was quite interesting,
Revealing. It was
very revealing. And obviously, we always have to take everything with a pinch of salt, but nonetheless, it's certainly consistent with everything that we saw from the meeting in the cabinet room, not in the Oval Office. He didn't get the Oval Office treatment. So here is the story in the Financial Times. It says Trump urged Zelensky to accept Putin's terms or be destroyed by Russia. U.S. President tossed aside maps of Ukraine frontline in volatile White House meeting. And then Donald Trump urged Vladimir Zelensky to accept Russia's terms for ending its war in a volatile White House meeting on Friday, warning that Vladimir Putin has said he would destroy Ukraine if it did not agree. The meeting between the U.S. and Ukrainian presidents descended many times into a shouting match, with Trump cursing all the time. People familiar with the matter said, cursing. They added that the U.S. president tossed aside maps of the front line in Ukraine, insisted that Zelensky surrender the entire Donbass region to Putin, and repeatedly echoed talking points the Russian leader had made in their call a day earlier. Now, what I like about that is how do they know what Putin said in that telephone call the day earlier. Oh, the repeating talking points that the Putin had emphasized in their call the day earlier. And you know this? How? We did you take part in this in this conversation? So, but it's very interesting, that clearly, I mean, we had the drumbeat that went on throughout last week about the tomahawks. That's it. We're on our way. We've got the war. We wanted that
It's
war.
Tomahawk Week.
Exactly, it's tomahawk. Just like the week before, it was drone. The
And then it
drone.
was security guarantees.
Security guarantees.
Then the Shadow Fleet.
The shadow fleet. Yeah, we had this. Yeah, the shadow fleet. So here, this palpable disappointment. And whenever they're disappointed that they didn't get what they want, they go back to the familiar routine. What's Putin got on Trump? That they always come back with that. It's such a stupid. I mean, it was stupid, 9 years ago, and they still come back to that.
You may make that argument, and there's maybe something to it when it comes to Israel. You really can't make that argument when it comes to Russia in the context of Ukraine, is because, as Trump said in the first Zelensky meeting that at that time in the Oval Office, is that he doesn't have the cards.
Right.
He just doesn't have the cards in terms of leverage, and that's why it's very, very difficult for him.
Well, it is, and the problem that Zelensky keeps saying, "Oh, we're doing fantastically well. We're doing fantastically well." The problem that he has is, well, it's everything you're doing is dependent on others. I mean, you can't be doing fantastically well if you're desperate for somebody else to prop you up. And that's his sort of, we're doing fantastically well, but hey, unless you give us this, this, and this, then of course, then it's hopeless.
Well, and then the implication is that if we lose, then you lose. You're going to go down with us.
That's right.
It's always implied.
That's right. Anyway, then this Financial Times story went on, and here we have, though Trump later endorsed the freeze of the current front lines, the acrimonious meeting appeared to reflect the capricious nature of the U.S. president's position on the war and his willingness to endorse Putin's maximalist.
Why would you say capricious?
Why would you say? Moreover,
well, I mean, if in terms of like indecision, it just strikes me as kind of odd. I mean,
no, exactly.
Because this is important to Trump. He's not. This is something that he wants to get off his plate, off his back.
He does indeed, and as we've discussed, he's trying different things. Which is what you have to do. I mean, to end the war, just trying one thing isn't going to get the job done. So he's trying different things. That isn't capricious. He's trying everything that he can. And as we've likened it to the Nixon days, Nixon was trying all sorts of different things, pressuring North Vietnam, pressuring South Vietnam, getting on Russia, getting to China, trying all sorts of things to find.
He didn't do it in such a public way, okay?
Right.
That George is absolutely right. I mean, in this sense, that Trump is kind of a normie president. Okay, if this doesn't work, get me another policy that works. Get me another policy.
Right.
We saw that with Clinton in dealing with the destruction of Yugoslavia. He was always looking for a new policy that would work.
Right.
So there's nothing new here.
Yeah. Here we have, and then when it goes on, during Friday's meeting, Trump appeared to have adopted many of Putin's talking points verbatim. And I noticed, this is the second time they said he's adopted many of Putin's talking points verbatim. Is it where'd you get the verbatim from? I mean, I don't know this, but it's verbatim. In other words,
that's a very, very specific. Verbatim has a very specific meaning.
It does indeed. Even when they contradicted his own recent statements about Russia's weaknesses, said European officials briefed on the meeting. According to a European official with knowledge of the meeting, this is also puzzling. I mean, how do European officials who weren't there be knowledgeable as to what went on in the meeting. I mean, we saw who was at the meeting. I didn't see any European officials there. Trump told Zelensky that Putin had told him the conflict was a special operation, not even a war, adding that the Ukrainian leader needed to cut a deal or face destruction. And the official said that Trump told Zelensky he was losing the war, warning, if Putin wants it, he will destroy you. At one point in the meeting, US President threw Ukraine's maps of the battlefield to one side. The official familiar with the encounter said, according to the official, Trump said he was, quote, sick, unquote, of seeing the maps of the front line, Ukraine, again and again. This red line, I don't even know where this is. I've never been there, Trump said, according to the official. And then Trump also said that Russia's economy is doing great, the official said, in a sharp contrast to his recent public remarks, in which he urged Putin to negotiate because his economy is going to collapse. The White House and the Ukrainian president's office did not immediately respond to requests for comment. And then Trump told Fox News on Sunday that he was confident about securing an end to the conflict and added that Putin is going to take something he's once certain property. Now, the thing is that I do think that Trump really wants Russia to wrap this up, and I think that's why he was saying to you, look, if Russia really wants to wrap it up, Russia can wrap it up. You just, you can't, if he wants to escalate and destroy Ukraine, he can do it. I mean, this is, think that this can go on forever. You can't base your policy on assuming it's going to go on forever. Russia will at some point get fed up and just destroy Ukraine.
And if we just take it face value, which George and I never do when it comes to Financial Times, but let's just say, okay, what is this telling you, everyone? Trump is not negotiating with Zelensky.
No, that's right.
That's I'm not here to negotiate with you. Okay, exactly you're here is a courtesy,
right?
And now the writing is on the wall. We got to wrap this up. You've got to swallow some pretty terrible medicine, but this is the way it is. It's not going to change. Okay. And because what Trump, I think Trump, this is part of the way he thinks when it comes to real estate and geopolitics. He sees what he wants. He sees it there. Right. I want this. How do we get there?
That's right.
Okay. That's why he'll try every different strategy, because he wants the end, because he wants to win.
That's right. That's right. And I think that's what. And I think
he's not going to give him a win, George.
No, and that's the thing. In that every time he sees Zelensky, Zelensky comes with a begging bowl and a shopping list that he can't pay for, and then they're going to have to work out some convoluted scheme whereby we have the fiction that Europeans are paying for something and Americans aren't paying for it. But the point is that it goes on forever. Zelensky's whole theory of the case, and NATO's theory of the case, the EU's theory of the case, sooner or later Russia will crumble. Now, Trump, he's not a Russia expert. He's not he's not a historian or whatever. He says, I'm not buying it. These people don't crumble. Whatever is, about the Russians, they don't crumble. Your whole expectation that somehow Russia is going to crumble, and particularly they're going to crumble in the face of Ukraine, isn't going to happen. So this strategy cannot work. It means it's a perpetual war, perpetual escalation until, America is fully dragged into this war. And then, of course, all bets are off. And Trump doesn't want to go down that path. And I think he knows that this is the trap that is being set for him. Obviously Zelensky's setting the trap, but then Zelensky's European minders are doing it. And that's the reason why he gets absolutely fed up with these meetings.
And that's why we can look at, we've talked a great deal about the Anchorage summit, where we're seeing now what he learned from it. Okay. What did he learn from? Well, his first assumption was I'm going to talk to Putin directly
Right.
because the Europeans are an obstacle. Now he is doubling, tripling, quadrupling
Right.
down on that. Okay,
Exactly.
because the Europeans, they don't want peace. They don't want the indivisibility of security. And I think
No.
Trump's beginning to understand it. And also, George and I were talking about why Budapest.
Right.
Well, I think it's really quite telling that Hungary and Ukraine have the worst bilateral relationship
Yes.
for a member of the European Union.
That's right.
And
and of course,
that's a huge middle finger to the Europeans.
absolutely, that's a huge thing. And how has Europe responded to this?
I'm sure you're going to tell us, George.
I'm going to tell you. You know the way you know exactly the way my mind's working, but this Europe today made this grand announcement. And here is in Politico to report this. EU countries moved to pull plug on Russian gas to Hungary and Slovakia.
Well, there's solidarity.
That's right. The two Central European countries have long spurned the phase out. Now, EU capitals are ready to overrule them. After 3 years of reasoning, pleading, and conceding, the EU has had enough. Ooh.
Wait, isn't the EU a union of equal member states?
Yes, equal member state. What I like is the respect for democracy and sovereignty. I mean, this is what makes the EU so delightful. That they so respect the wishes of the voters. You know, Hungary's voters and Slovakia's voters. Oh, Monday, that's today, the bloc's 27 member countries are expected to back a new bill that will permanently cut Russia's gas supplies to Hungary and Slovakia, whether they like it or not.
I'd like to interject everyone here. You know, if they like it or not. Well, they're certainly not going to like it. What is the Russian position? You don't want to buy it? You don't want to buy it? Okay, fine.
Right,
We'll see
right,
somewhere
yes.
else. So it's not punishing Russia. It's punishing Europe.
Well, that's the interesting thing about all of this. You know, we read all these stories one after another. Like, you know, Hungary and Slovakia, you know, they're small countries. The amount that Russia sells to Hungary and Slovakia is by its nature, a drop in the ocean as compared to how much gas it sells worldwide. So the EU knows perfectly well this isn't going to hurt Russia in any way at all. It's only going to hurt Hungary and Slovakia, in which case then you raise the next one. Well, why are you hurting Hungary and Slovakia? Aren't they member states of the EU? Aren't you supposed to be helping them? Aren't you supposed to be protecting them? But instead, you're punishing them because they don't agree with your policy.
And I'd like to point out to everyone here, the best maintenance for gas lines is their use. If you stop using them, then you start having technical problems because the usage itself is the maintenance. Okay,
Right.
so you turn these things off, and
Right.
these are old. These are Soviet pipelines, most
Right.
of them. Okay,
Right.
and the Ukrainians and other countries have not kept them up, and they're in
Right.
disrepair. That's why they built the Nord Stream, George.
Well, that's
okay?
right. That's right.
And so they're tinkering with the long term here. Okay, they'll get a short term rush. You know, we did it to like George said. It's a rounding area point for the Russian gas exports. Okay, a rounding error is the word I want.
What's also very amusing is that whenever the EU talks about, Russian gas and Russian oil, they always say how, Russia has weaponized energy against us. Russia, threatened our energy security. They always say this. And they're lying through their teeth when they say this, because they're fooling their public. And the public think, oh, God, those Ruskies, you can't trust them. They're always using energy against us and threatening our energy security. And then, of course, the point is that they never, not once, you can't think of a single episode, not one episode in which Russia was an unreliable provider of energy. It's the EU that has been playing games with energy.
In the case of Ukraine, they were an unreliable consumer. Okay, they
Right.
didn't pay their bills.
Right. That's right. That's right. So but this is typical of EU and NATO lying. Like values and whatnot. That somehow, oh well, Russia, became dependent on the Russians, and they threatened our energy. Well, who imposed the sanctions? Did Russia impose the sanctions? Who blew up Nord Stream? Did Russia do that? I mean, so it's this extraordinary this projection on Russia, and I guess the media buy into it. And of course, the public. I mean, they don't really know. Well, it's the Russians. Right? What do you expect from them? So they do this all the time. These lies about how the Russians, they were, it's like this of the aggression. And then here, but throughout that bitter energy divorce, Budapest and Bratislava have stubbornly refused to play ball, repeatedly arguing that they
Well,
have.
why, everyone? Why have they done that? They're landlocked. Okay, they can only get natural gas. They can't get LNG. I mean, you have to have a
Right,
port for that. Okay,
right,
and you
right,
have to have very sophisticated technology to
right.
finally release it
But,
into.
but that's right. But notice what Politico does here. He says repeatedly, Budapest repeatedly arguing that they have no real alternative. Their Russia-friendly governments complained that quitting Moscow would mean exploding prices for consumers. Experts largely dispute those claims. Well, who are these experts? And in any case, EU capitals are ready to
In
overrule.
any case, and is if whatever the argument that we presented, you're probably not going. What are they going to have to go back to coal? Well, what
Well,
about
that's right. Now, energy prices are pretty high already. I mean, and this is Hungary. I mean, the energy prices are high in the winter, and the winters here aren't that cold. They're not Moscow style winters. The energy prices are absolutely
I was
roof.
there one
Right.
winter.
Right. Yeah.
That's a decent, that's a real winter. Let me put it
Yeah.
that
It's a
way.
winter. It's a winter.
I grew up in Colorado. They have a real winter. I live in Moscow. They truly have a real winter. When I was in Budapest, that was winter.
Right. So it's winter. So in January, you need your heating. So and those prices are absolutely through the roof. So if you cut yourself off from Russian gas, you're really going to suffer. I mean, people are really going to suffer. But of course, a lot of this has to do. The EU wants Orban out, and they're calculating, hey, if people have a really cold winter and they have these horrific energy prices, people can't afford to pay their
And they
heat
have an
bills,
election in
and they have an
Hungary.
election in next April. Thinks maybe they're going to take out their anger and frustration on Viktor Orban. So they're making a political calculation here, but it has nothing to do with Russia. I mean, this is none of this in any way hurts the Russians. So therefore, this whole idea that this is all about punishing the Russians. No, it is not. It is all about the anger towards Viktor Orban, who hasn't played ball with you, and Viktor Orban is now center of world stage. He's going to be a player at this summit. He will play. The EU, Macron will not be a player. He will not be there. Merz will not be there.
Well,
Viktor Orban will be front and center in this summit.
Considering Trump has this propensity now to deeply involve himself in the internal affairs of allies, you have to get rid of this judge in Argentina. Netanyahu should be given a pardon. Maybe Trump is going to turn around and say to Ursula von der Leyen, "No, you're going to leave Hungary alone. You're going to leave him alone. Okay, thanks." I would be surprised, George.
Right. No,
we might hear during the summer. We might hear something about that. I really want to make sure Budapest is warm year round. You know what I mean, guys?
Yes. Well, he did. As I say, he did say at Sharm el Sheikh last Monday that I know people don't like you here, but I like you, and that's all that matters. So, and he's surrounded by Starmer and Macron. And everything. I know people don't like you, but I like you.
Yeah, this is the Hungarian prime minister. This is
Yes,
a little country
very small,
in the
very
center
very
of Europe. And who is the apple of Trump's eye in Europe?
yeah.
Viktor Orban.
That's
Okay.
right. That's right. Now, on a more serious note, and we've talked about this before, and I think we should take it very seriously. The Europeans are undoubtedly preparing for war. I mean, they are preparing for war with Russia, and this goes on day after day. When you listen to von der Leyen and you listen to Kaja Kallas, I mean, they are planning for this war. I mean, it's just the belligerence that ferocity. I mean, that's all they ever talk about. All the things that you thought, hey, what about talking about agriculture, industry,
Diplomacy.
yeah, yeah, all of that, all the sort of the competitiveness of your manufactured products in the world, all the sort of things that you thought the EU would be talking about. I mean, they don't. All they talk about is the preparation for war. So here is an article. Here's a few articles from recent days. It's just from just the last few days. Here's Politico. EU to be ready for war with Russia by 2030. The European Commission aims to help bloc prepare for the battlefields of tomorrow.
Yeah, I get the impression, George, it's the European Commission that wants to go to war because nobody else seems to want that.
No, that's right. It's a way of, but what they're doing is beating the public over the head until the public is actually persuaded to believe that Russia is the enemy and that there has to be a once and for all reckoning with Russia. 2030.
Well, it's been attempted a couple of times.
It has indeed. It has indeed. There's a very much a track record of this. And here it says EU countries have 5 years to prepare for war, according to a military plan that will be presented by the European Commission. And we'll see by Politico. By 2030, Europe needs a sufficiently strong European defense posture to credibly deter its adversaries, as well as respond to any aggressions. So when they talk about defense, but of course then we all know that this has nothing to do with defense. No one is threatening Europe, so this is just another European lie.
Yeah, but also, George, it sounds like it's not deterrence; it's offensive capacity.
Offensive capacity. That's exactly right. So there it goes on. The EU executive body is pushing capitals to buy weapons together. Wants at least 40% of defense procurement to be joint contracts, and so on. And then, but one of its main objectives to fill EU capability gaps in 9 areas: air and missile defense, enablers, military mobility, artillery systems, AI and cyber, missile and ammunition. Goes on.
What else is there?
Right, exactly. And then we have it also includes timelines for 3 key projects. Remember, this is the EU. This isn't NATO. This is the EU, which is completely now militarizing and just simply becoming a branch of NATO. The Eastern Flank Watch, which will reintegrate ground defense systems, air defense, and the European drone wall. And then there's the Commission hopes.
Well, on the drone wall, I really liked how the Portuguese and the Spaniards said, "Oh, we're not really interested in." I mean, yeah, if the Baltic republics and Poland and Romania they want to have a drone wall, we have nothing against it, but we're not on that wall. Okay, we're on the sea.
Yeah. And then it says that the document says the EU will help to mobilize up to 800 billion euros to spend on defense, including this 150 billion loans for weapons, this loans for weapons, SAVE program, but then here's Bloomberg. EU military plan pitches drone and air defense projects for 2026. The European Union will propose launching joint drone and air defense projects in the coming months as part of an ambitious 5-year plan to rearm the continent and constrain Russia. So you're now constraining Russia. That's your goal, even though
So, so
Mhm.
this plan here, they're going to spend. The previous slide mentioned 800 billion euro
Yeah. Hmm.
against a figment of their imagination.
Hmm. Hmm.
What kind of social programs are they going to have to cut for that, George? Or go into debt? Go into
Yeah,
debt.
I think it's going to be yeah, there's going to be an awful lot. So what they really wanted, they're completely militarizing their economies, and then this is yeah, the proposal prepared by the European Commission
No,
and
no,
so
no.
on.
Go back.
Yeah.
I thought
Mhm.
authoritarian states are increasingly interfering in our societies, and I guess, and economies.
Mhm.
I mean, they become authoritarian with their
Right.
drive to war,
Right.
their censorship, for
Yes.
example, banning political parties, banning politicians, putting
Right.
politicians under house arrest. That's
Yep.
authoritarian.
That's right. That's right. And they're going to do an awful lot of that because I think political parties that are deemed to be too friendly to Russia will simply be banned. I mean, these are parties that will be declared, hey, we're at war. We can't afford to have political parties,
Well,
newspapers,
and on
political
top of
movements that are not wholly on our side against Russia.
yeah, but they're deemed as pro-Russia. Okay,
Yes, yeah, yeah,
if you
exactly.
look at them very carefully, they're anti-war. They're anti-Ukraine war.
Yeah,
They have very strong questions about NATO's mission. They're not
yeah,
wanting to leave,
right,
and most of their anger is directed at Brussels, not at
right.
Moscow.
That's right. that's, that's that's exactly right. Um, and so yeah, but this is the authoritarian states. I remember the EU is really, if nothing if not authoritarian. They're openly advocating internet censorship, and of course, we still remember what they did during the COVID era. I mean, they were ready to introduce a police state. I mean, it didn't quite work out for them. That doesn't mean they're not going to try again. And
Oh no! Well, George and I tend to we were of the opinion that the COVID was a beta experiment.
exactly, it absolutely was. Um, and then it goes on, and then it's, the finances here. And then, as Viktor Orban points out, all one keeps hearing these days is Europe is at war. Ms. von der Leyen travels the world speaking about war without any mandate, while EU treaties clearly assign foreign and security policy to the member states. Europe is consumed by pro war psychosis. Instead, leaders must wake up and take responsibility for achieving real peace. The time to negotiate is now. And of course, there's that. Now, here is this the Commission and the High Representative present new defense roadmap to strengthen European defense capabilities. And this is the defense readiness, this 2030. And here's Ursula von der Leyen, who says the recent threats have shown that Europe is at risk. We have to protect every citizen and square centimeter of our territory. Europe must respond with unity, solidarity, and determination. Today's
Well,
defense roadmap
I think
presents
we
a
could.
clear plan with shared goals and concrete milestones on our path to 2030.
The biggest threat to the EU is von der Leyen.
Yeah, I think so. She's just horrific. I mean, she really is just psychotic. Um, and then here's this roadmap, and full defense readiness means ensuring member states' armed forces can anticipate, prepare for, and respond to any crisis, including high intensity conflict. Um, and and there's Kaya Kallas. Defense is a prerequisite for preserving peace, and Europe's defenses are not yet as strong as they should be. The roadmap we present today is a proposal to change this, and then so on, and then they went off to Ukraine. This is today delegation of the European Union to Ukraine, and made all their usual statements. And here's the Kaya Kallas. This roadmap for defense readiness is a plan to keep peace. Of course it is. Over the next few years, there must be a major buildup of European defense capabilities. Russia has no capacity to launch an attack on the EU today, but it could prepare itself in the years to come. Danger will not disappear, even if the war in Ukraine ends.
Well,
Um,
and this is all, we have to remind everyone we haven't seen one peace feeler, one real effort of negotiation to avoid all of this.
no, no,
No inclination on the part of these people to do that,
no.
which should inform you what their agenda is.
Yep.
Is what it is. They want to create a unitary state. They want to dissolve the sovereignty of all of
Right.
its member
That's
states,
right.
and
That's
they
right.
want to have the commission in
That's
Brussels
right.
be
That's
the
right.
overlord.
That's
Okay,
right. That's
but
right.
they're going backwards here.
That's
And
right.
as George has pointed out, I mean, what about the other things that make a state work, like the waterworks and bridges and roads and
Yeah,
all?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
No
yeah,
mention
yeah.
of that.
No,
Okay,
they have no interest in any of that.
conscription. George lives in Europe. I've spent many of my years of my life in Europe. Nobody's interested in conscription. No one.
No, that's the thing. No, no, nobody is. But what they're going to do is essentially just impose it on the public, and
Conscription. That's why it's called.
that's conscription, exactly. And by then, of course, it'll be too late. And I think that's the problem, is that there aren't enough people like us who are kind of aware of, like, where is this going? I mean, this is just getting more and more insane, and people aren't realizing until the day comes when they announce conscription. By then, it'll be too late, because they'll say, well, we have to, because we're under threat from Russia. Russia has these aggressive ambitions against us. So this is what they're doing. This is a drumbeat for war, and they thought that they were well on their way with these tomahawks. And so that's it. Once they're there, those tomahawks are there. This is really going to upset the Russians, and then we're going to have the war we've been dreaming of. You look at Kaja Kallas and Ursula von der Leyen. Look at the two of them. These two horrific creatures, and when they're cackling together, they're cackling for war. I mean, they really are just like these two witches rubbing their hands together. We're going to have war, and of course, Ursula von der Leyen, she's going to make sure that her own children, they're going to avoid fighting, as always. And I don't know how old Kaja Kallas has children. I don't even know if she has any children, but I'm sure she's going to make sure.
Well,
that,
I mean, and you know what, George? 2030, Ursula may make sure that she's maintains her position in perpetuity. Okay.
yes, yes.
Okay. It's not impossible. I don't think there aren't term limits that I'm aware of. But okay, but what's the other side of the coin of this war hysteria, the psychosis? Well, if you're sitting in Moscow and you see, oh, they're going to devote $800 billion to this and that, well, Russia has no other option than to prepare. See,
Yep.
now we go this spiral.
It's always
Okay.
like that. It's always like
Like that. I mean, a cursory knowledge of great power conflict would tell you that. Look at the British and the Germans with the Navy.
the Anglo-German naval rivalry. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
That's exactly right. Because of course the Germans, they argued that, hey, we're far behind the British, and the British, if they wanted, they can impose a naval blockade, and there's nothing that we Germans can do about it, because we just don't have the navy to break a British naval blockade. So we have to build up a proper navy. The moment they started doing that, the British got really angry and deemed Germany to be an existential threat. So that's exactly what happened. So the Russians watch this. They watch Kaja Kallas. They see she's the foreign minister of the EU, and they talk like this, and we have to take this seriously, because if you don't take it seriously, then you're not much use as a leader of your country. And that's why this is so dangerous, because I mean, it's defensive. Everybody says what they do is defensive. I mean, that's as old as the hills. What we do is defensive. What they do is offensive. But what the EU is now doing is, without question, offensive. What they're doing is preparing for a war with Russia. And how that's going to happen. When and if they launch an attack, they'll say we had to do it because it was defensive. It was a
Well,
proactive attack.
George and I, we spent, I think it was on Friday, that we spent a lot of time on this, and I just want to compress it down. When you have this kind of war hysteria, and if they do in fact invest in these kinds of funds into these programs, which we have every reason to believe that they will, Russia is going to react to it, and then you get into this very dangerous moment of. And you have to think of like the life cycle of a jet or a missile. Okay, I mean, and then you look at the other side and what they're doing, and say, at a certain point you're going to say, well, with this investment, we've peaked. We're at our best moment. Okay, and they're still a little bit behind in this and that. If there's going to be a conflict, we should start it on our terms.
Well, that's right, and that's why. If it thinks about what is the EU NATO strategy, is to keep the war going for as long as possible, because they expect that the longer it goes on, the weaker Russia will get. So that in 3, 4, 5 years' time, 2030, that's their framework. Russia will have been through 8 years of war. That's the optimal time for us. Because they're just going to be exhausted. I mean, everybody's exhausted after 8 years of war. That's their plan. Why did they pick on this day? Why have they picked on 2030? That's going to be the optimal time, and that's why it's absolutely they're determined to keep this war going. That's the only policy that is to keep this war going.
Well, they should be careful what they wish for, because Europe doesn't have any kind of vertically integrated defense industry. It doesn't. They even admit it in their documents. Okay, it's a bit opaque, but they're basically saying we got all these bits and pieces, and we're going to have to find a way to somehow make them work. Right. And then you have like the Germans and the French will work on this one, the Italians and the Romanians. That this is all on paper. This is on paper.
It's on paper, but
juxtapose that. Russia has a completely vertically integrated defense industry.
Right, but if they put their minds to it, Europeans can put that together. They can, it all depends on, if they put their minds.
I'm not as optimistic as you are.
I'm not being optimistic. I'm pessimistic. I think that if they determine to go to war, and they can figure all this out. They can do all the vertical integration. The Germans, after all, can go back to the world. All of these things can be done. I mean, I think.
No. My point is actually agreeing with you, is that because it is such a challenge and the investments will be huge. I'm talking about big numbers here. All the more reason why there'll be those who say, look, this is our window, that the next 3 months, 6 months,
right.
If this is going to happen, we got to do it now. Because George and I are the only two people. Maybe people will scoff at us now and maybe in the future. But if you're going down this path, then you have to keep in mind the possibility of a preemptive war.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And preemptive wars are always deemed to be defensive. We're defensive. And people, the public buys into it. Well, of course we're defensive. We're good. We're democracies. We're on the side of God. I mean, of course it was a defensive war. They were aggressors. And then you say, well, who fired the first shot? Well, that doesn't matter. Who fired?
Well, we were provoked. We were provoked.
That's right. But it's always. I mean, how many people, when they look back on the 1967 war, also because Israel was being defensive. I mean, the widespread consensus, not just within Israel, even in the West. Oh, that was, of course, the Arabs launched an unprovoked attack on Israel. So, do you actually know what happened on that? No, it was Israel who started it. Well, maybe they started it, but it was entirely defensive.
And Saddam's mushroom cloud over New York, that provoked.
That was also defensive. Yeah, the mushroom cloud. Yeah, of course it was defensive. We would never dream of launching an aggressive war. How can we? We're democracies. We don't do that. We're for values. Now, we said yesterday we'd talk a little bit about the Middle East. So, yesterday,
George, I thought you were going to say we're going to talk about the ceasefire, and then I was very much prepared to say, what ceasefire? Keep going.
Right, what ceasefire? But that's right. But at the moment, according to Israel, the ceasefire is back on. That's the it was very much up in the air. But I think what I think was interesting was Trump's response to the apparent collapse of the ceasefire. So let's just see what it was that Trump said. So this is no, we don't want him.
Not again.
We want to make sure that it's going to be very peaceful with Hamas. And as you know, they've been quite rambunctious. They've been doing some shooting, and we think maybe the leadership isn't involved in that. You know, some rebels within, but either way, it's going to be handled properly. It's going to be handled toughly, but properly.
Is the ceasefire still in place?
All right.
Oh yeah, Trump. Oh yeah, that's a real tell that clip.
Right, but notice what he said. He's basically agreeing with the claims that Hamas has said, which is that we didn't do anything to break the ceasefire, and I think this is if you look at this the story, let's say from Axios. I mean, Axios was also pretty much saying, yeah, it was this is Israel that that just simply acted without really ascertaining whether the Hamas had just sort of had broken the ceasefire. So here is the Axios, and there's U.S. scrambles to save Gaza peace deal amid new clashes, and then this is the IDF. They claim this, that the militants came out of the tunnel. And then these IDF conducted around 100 airstrikes, and then of course Netanyahu said, "Oh, Hamas had violated the ceasefire," but then it says the IDF announced that in accordance with the directive of the political leadership, that the ceasefire will be adhered to, adhered after its violation by Hamas. And then it says Hamas's military wing denied any involvement in the incident in Rafah and emphasized it is fully committed to the ceasefire.
Well, mentioning Rafah is really quite interesting because it's supposed to be open. It's not, and I think as we're speaking right now, it is not open.
Right. Well, that's interesting whether they're going to open it or not. But certainly Israel has said that they're still committed to the ceasefire, and they said that they will open it to more aid. So we'll see whether that happens. But the point is that Hamas says we are not aware of any incidents or clashes taking place in the Rafah area because these are zones under Israeli control, and contact has been severed with our groups that remain there. Now, I still think that Trump really is not. He's not buying into the whole Israeli line. I mean, he just isn't doing that because we had the Israelis go, "Oh, Hamas is violating the agreement. They promised to return our the bodies of the deceased hostages. They're violating. They haven't delivered. They are actually delivering them. They've now delivered, I think, 11 out of 28. So they are doing it. But basically, the Americans are saying they can't get at these bodies. They're buried under the rubble."
Which you're the one, and you're the ones who created the rubble.
Exactly, you're the ones exactly. They're just the rubble. It's not like they buried them underground.
There's one thing that's interesting in all of this. That little clip that you showed just a second ago of Trump. This one just drive the Israelis crazy because Trump is by talking about Hamas, not defending them, not being their lawyer or anything, but he's legitimizing them. And this is something the Israelis abhor.
Right.
Okay. And that's one of the it's one of these issues that the Israelis can't seem to comprehend. Because I mean, if it's a deal, it's two parties, and you have to recognize the legitimacy of the second party, which they for them that's an anathema. They can't do that. But they
absolutely.
And you're right. Trump has hung too much on this here.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the point.
I mean, again, George and I have been talking about this ever since the beginning of October, when all this was being talked about. My gut still is the Israelis are treating it like the Lebanon model. There's a ceasefire, but
Right. No, I'm
so
sure they
far.
will, and I'm sure they're going to, as Israel is wont, they will constantly, bombard the administration with the horror stories about Hamas. But so far, that story about Hamas is back, they're executing people, they're committing violence, they're killing people. My God, this is horrific. And the administration is saying no, they're restoring public order. More than that, not just that they're restoring, they're getting rid of these gangsters. The Israelis set up these gangs. You set up these anti-Hamas gangs who are looting. They're the ones who are looting the food. All these accusations that Hamas is looting the food. No, it's these gangs that you set up who are looting the food.
And that's the reporting you hear about on the ground. Okay, that in fact, it's chaos, and you need to have some kind of organizing force, and that is Hamas.
That's right. That's right.
You like
That's
it
right.
or not, it's the case.
And that's the thing. And the administration is saying no. I mean, they are restoring order. So you're saying, the Hamas is back, so they're restoring order, and it is a part of the 20-point plan that Hamas, if they give up their guns, they can take part in the administration of the country. I mean, they have to have somebody who knows how to run things. I mean, somebody who knows how to run a hospital, somebody who knows how to run a post office or whatever. You need people who have administrative experience. So therefore, that's still part of the 20-point plan. I mean, I guess the question is, will Trump stick with it? And
well, what's one of the things that's happened with the so-called ceasefire? I could say so-called because there is no ceasefire. But one thing, and this is something that I think that the Israelis, Netanyahu, angled on, is that if you look at the coverage in media of the ceasefire, what's the one word they're not using anymore? They're not using genocide anymore. That is dropped out, and they're focused on ceasefire. But because it's a fake ceasefire, as far as I am concerned, they have got a very temporary rhetorical win here, a narrative win, because they've shifted it from genocide to ceasefire. That does serve their purposes.
Well, this serves their purpose, but a ceasefire is a ceasefire. I mean, why you expect people to be talking about
people are still
dying
dying
when there's a ceasefire? I mean, it's not perfect.
Well, no, I would say
are not perfect, but there is a ceasefire. So obviously,
George, if aid isn't getting in sufficient amounts, and it's still
all right.
Some people would call it genocide.
All right, but those are issues that can be resolved because that's getting aid in and so on. Now you have the administration, the Sharm el Sheikh declaration.
I never can say it right.
You gotta remember the Sharm comes before the Sheikh.
Right, exactly.
That's the key. The Sharm el Sheikh declaration.
The Sheikh Sham.
Exactly. There's the temptation is to say Sheikh el Sham, but but that was signed by United States, Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt, and that's really the key as to whether this can work. Because if you now have America has as its partners 3 Muslim states, 2 of whom are regarded by Israel as supporters of Hamas, as bankrollers of Hamas. So if Turkey and Qatar, they're partners of the United States, then that's a mechanism for applying pressure on the United States, and the United States can then apply pressure on them. And if there's really need to deal with Hamas issue, then they've got a way of addressing Hamas.
That's the way it's supposed to work.
That's the thing. But they did set this up. This isn't Trump and Netanyahu signed a joint declaration. Yeah, that's meaning. That would be meaningless.
What we need to do is, can we get beyond phase 1? And the Israelis are making it very, very difficult. My goodness, I mean, again, let's get our facts straight here. What did Hamas agree to. It did not agree to the 20-point program. It didn't. It said we're interested in some of these. And that was enough for Trump to take a victory lap.
Right,
Okay.
right,
And
right.
but I mean, the way it's being presented to the public is that they were on board for everything. No, it's far more complicated than that. And it's all predicated, and I'm agreeing with George here, it's all predicated if you can get past phase one. But the Israelis are making it very, very difficult.
Very
It's
difficult.
it's not impossible to get past phase one.
Well, this is now this week. Steve Witkoff is heading to the Middle East with J.D. Vance. The whole point of this visit
He's there now, isn't he?
either today, either they're today or they'll be there tomorrow. So this will be joint J.D. Vance. That's the vice president. So that's at a senior level. To get to phase two. That you're absolutely right. That's gonna be the key. Can they get to phase two? Because if we're just going to be still arguing endlessly about who's adhering or not adhering to the ceasefire, then we're not going to get anywhere. Phase two is the key. Well, one thing I do want to show is there's a clip from an interview given on 60 Minutes with Witkoff and Jared Kushner. And they say they talk about Israel, and I thought quite an interesting way. This is Jared Kushner talking. This is Trump's son-in-law, but a fanatical Zionist. Let's take a look.
We want to walk through, chronologically, and we want to start with the bombing in Doha. We've been told that bombing, the Israelis bombing the compound where the Hamas negotiators were in the capital of Qatar, that was a turning point, that the Israelis had crossed some line. Explain how that was a turning point. What went through everybody's mind? How did it move your negotiations from one place to another place?
Well, Leslie, we were on that, I want to say Monday. It was Monday, Jared, right? Yeah, we were Monday, and it was my turn to host the negotiation. So me, Ron Dermer, who was the lead minister in Israel, and Jared were at my home, and we were going through the peace proposals that we were putting on the table. And at the time, we were discussing compromise deals. We were discussing what they called the 10 and 10. 10 hostages come out, 10 get left for the final negotiation. We were discussing a complete deal. And we were sending, Jared was drafting. He had his computer out. And he was drafting. We were, the three of us, having what I thought was a very productive session. And we were sending these drafts back to the Qataris, who were sitting in the room with
in Doha,
presumably Hamas, and they were going over things. And we came away thinking that we were awful close to a deal. And in fact, I was supposed to go to Paris on Friday and meet Sheikh Mohammed and several other people. We had agreed to that trip, and we came up with this notion that we would let Hamas have a 4.5 day period of time to get back to us as to whether the deal was done or not. And we woke up the next morning to find out that there had been this attack. Of course, I was called by the president.
You had no idea, obviously.
None whatsoever.
Don't answer it for him, please.
Jared and I, I just feel we felt a little bit betrayed.
Now, I had heard that the president, that he was furious.
I think he felt like the Israelis were getting a little bit out of control in what they were doing, and that it was time to be very strong and stop them from doing things that he felt were not in their long-term interests.
People should understand.
All right. So, what's just interesting here is who is speaking. These are two people who are, fervent supporters of Israel. And that can't be easy for Jared to say, they're getting a little bit out of control. Oh, so Israel is under your control. So this whole notion that you're this independent state, sovereign state. Oh, apparently you do have control over it, Israel, and therefore, Israel does indeed act with the United States under the control of the United States, and then lo and behold, the puppet thinks that he's a real boy, and then he's suddenly out of control. And that's why I thought that was quite striking. And they're conveying, Trump was then quite pissed off about Israel.
Well, it is quite revealing, and then you could tell when she was asking her first question, Jared was hoping that Witkoff would take it. Okay?
Witkoff would take it, yes.
Okay, because Jared, I mean, this goes back to the first Trump administration when he had his grand plan for trade routes in the Middle East and all of this, and there was a plan for Gaza, except for he forgot to mention the Palestinians. I remember you and I talking about it at great length. Okay,
yeah, that's right.
It is a real admission there.
Right.
But also one has to wonder, when for Trump, when he looks at these two guys, one of them is his son-in-law.
Yeah.
Is it, whose side are you on here?
Yep.
Are you on my side, on the Trump side?
Right.
Because this we thing gets out of control.
Right. But this is where he gets, because if you're saying, oh, and Trump said, we talks about October the 7th, and then he talks about, oh, I'm on Israel's side and everything else. But ultimately, Trump does know that you're supposed to be on America's side. And he knows people have been saying that. Whose side are you on? You're on America's side. That's what you're supposed to be. If you're the president of the United States, you have to be on America's side. So even the way Jared puts it, oh, it's not in Israel's long-term interests. But basically, you're the son-in-law of the president. The president is saying this is what's in the long-term interest of the United States, and it's certainly not in the long-term interest of the United States to get yourself
not in the immediate, interim, and long-term interest of Donald Trump.
No, it's not. It isn't. And I think that this is why I hope I'm saying it's a hope. There's a possibility that Trump will push forward with the next phase of the agreement. I mean, that's going to be the key. The moving towards phase two.
Our first reactions to this, remember it like it was 5 minutes ago. We had very strong different views on this plan. But one thing you and I agreed with full-heartedly, this all gets down to him.
Yep. It absolutely does get down to him, because he has the wherewithal to apply pressure against Israel if he chooses to do so. If Jared there says Israel is getting a little out of control, well, that means you can bring Israel under control. I mean, apparently you can control Israel if you want to. And that basically, you've just been allowing Israel to do whatever it wants, and that's been your policy. But there's no reason for it other than you're supporting Israel. And so then when Trump does this, I think it's a significant. That's why when we looked earlier at that little presser he had aboard Air Force One, he said, after all, what he said there was he wasn't buying the Israeli line. He said, well, it may be just some people out of the leadership isn't in control of some of these people. He wasn't buying what Netanyahu was selling.
The proof of the pudding is in the tasting, and we haven't got the taste, and we're still right there. My primary pushback against this plan as it stands is that Donald Trump, as a world historic figure, is he capable of putting the greater Israel agenda, the Zionist mission of a greater Israel, can he put that in check? That's a huge question, and nobody has the answer to it. The odds are against him, I would say.
The odds, obviously, the odds are against it. However, if one looks at history, there have been presidents, in a number of presidents, who have stood up to Israel. When they wanted to, and they basically said, "No, you're not going to get what you want." Um, and remember, I mean, we got Reagan. He stood up to Menachem Begin. You had Eisenhower. Basically, he was very strong. He tells Israel, "You got to get out of the Sinai." And I'm not.
Oh, he
I'm,
was
I'm
pissed
not
off with
joking with you.
the French and the British too.
He was, yeah, exactly. But you see, the French and the British, they backed away straight away. They didn't even argue. So boom, right? Within hours they backed away. Israel didn't. Israel just continued, because hey, it doesn't apply to me. I mean, that applies to them. They just continued, and I said, hey, I thought I made myself clear. You're supposed to withdraw, and Israel refused to withdraw until he really got real mad with Israel. Then, of course, we had Kennedy, who said, "Hey, what the hell are you doing at Dimona? I mean, you're supposed to be. You claim you're doing this peaceful nuclear energy. I'm not buying it for 1 minute."
And for a variety of reasons, we know what happened to Kennedy.
That's right. That's right. So can we?
I'm not saying anything.
No. That's right. But it was certainly very, very interesting. He's saying, you got. You claim that this is all peaceful nuclear energy. How come no one can go in
Get into the NPP?
Yeah. That's right. I mean, we just want to send some international inspectors to see that you are indeed engaged in peaceful nuclear energy. And of course, they weren't. And Kennedy knew that they weren't. And then that was because the last time any American official actually tried to do something about Israel's nuclear military nuclear program. So it was basically Israel had lied. So anyway, just to go back, Trump, if he wants to, he can do what other presidents have done, which is to stand up to the Israel.
Yeah, but I mean, the interesting thing is, what makes it more perplexing is that the presidents that George has mentioned, and I completely agree with him, but it was like even up to like 1973, the Israelis prided themselves in being able to take care of themselves. Okay,
Right.
And they had more or less done that. Okay, they always had American support, but not like they have today. I mean, there's no comparison. So the reliance of Israel on the United States is all encompassing.
Right.
You would think that the president of the United States would have enormous leverage, but we see like a negotiation going on. This is what is troublesome. The outcome is unclear, and the political implications inside the United States are quite obvious for everyone to see. I mean, 3 years ago, if you would have told me that soon there's going to be a sea change against Israel, I would have thought you're out of your mind. That's a pillar of the American outlook. Okay, Israel is our friend. That has changed dramatically. So there's a lot of things that Trump has to deal with that no other president has had to deal with.
That's very true. However, there's various characters at Sharm el Sheikh on Monday who flattered Trump. You are a great peacemaker par excellence. This is historic and so on. But they knew what they were doing, because they said,
because it's about you.
It's about you. That means you have an incentive to keep that peace, because if it breaks down, then you kind of look like an idiot. I mean, you were hailed as the great peacemaker, a historic figure. You brought conflicts to an end. He says 3,000 years. We ended I don't know why he picked 3,000 year conflict.
You brought that from Leon Uris or something. Okay.
You brought it to an end. So therefore, you have the incentive to stick with it. And I think that's what, because if it breaks down, if it just we're going to be back to where we were in March, and then the whole thing starts up again. Well, where's your historic peace? It'll just be forgotten like everything else. So he has the incentive to maintain the peace. That's why I do think it's significant, this visit by J.D. Vance and Steve Witkoff. Why are they going? Well, they're going in order to try to implement phase two. They're not doing it because of this this ceasefire thing. They need to get to this phase two. They know that's the key.
They have to, George, because they own it.
That's right.
They own it.
own it.
They don't have any choice right now. They own it.
Right, right. That's right, and that's why I think it is significant that so far. I mean, admittedly, it's only been a week so far. Trump has not bought into the rubbish that Netanyahu is selling, and I think that is significant. I mean, there's been there's a lot of people who are trying to persuade Trump that Hamas is violating the agreement, and therefore to justify any violation by Israel. So now, do we know anything about this the meeting? It's supposed to take place this week between Marco Rubio and Lavrov. I haven't heard that there's any place or any time has yet been set for that.
Oh, well, I don't think that has been disclosed. Okay, but my sense is the Russians are going to ask Marco, so what are you going to tell us this time?
Mm-hmm.
Because our positions are quite clear. I mean, something I mentioned weeks and months ago about borders and a line of contact. I think you and I are in agreement that Zaporozhye and Kherson, there's wiggle room on where the border will be.
Right.
I mean, nobody's going to die on that hill. Okay, all right. And I don't know. I mean, it's just the bee in my bonnet. I mean, maybe Lavrov say, remember we were talking about maybe kind of a pan-European thing.
Right.
Maybe you guys thought about that.
Right.
That's what. Maybe I'm a prisoner of my own thoughts on this here because I can't see any other way out. Where people are very passionate about these things. What George and I want, I know I can speak for George on this. We want the end of the conflict. We want everyone to have security. Sorry, it's not a very dramatic speech on my part.
Right.
Okay. And I think that is imminently doable. I really do.
No, I agree. It's very much doable. But this is why. But this meeting is important because this is laying the groundwork.
I don't think there'll be
for the
other
Budapest
meetings
Summit.
after this, George. I think that put up or shut up. This is a put up, shut up moment.
Right.
Anchorage wasn't. No. Anchorage was.
But
this is different than
this
Anchorage.
is a put up or shut up. No, I agree. But it has to take place because I think the Budapest Summit has to take place. I mean, now there's a lot of expectations, so they have to meet essentially to lay the groundwork for the Budapest Summit. So I would think. I mean, the Russians will formulate something along the lines. They're going to go to Marco Rubio and they will present him with, here's the Istanbul document. This is what we're talking about. We're going to work on that, and the territorial issues. We can put off for a later date, but we have to work on this just as we did in Istanbul. That this is the most important part of it. And I would have thought, they'll give it to Rubio. Rubio will present it to Trump, and Trump will say, "Okay, well, that sounds reasonable. I mean, that's what we're going to discuss. Some, mutual security guarantees. Fine, I'm down. Let's meet and talk about security guarantees."
I mean, this is not the Western narrative about the Ukraine project. They make it so they can't win. They can't end it, and they can't afford it. Right. And this is what this is the logjam that we have here. Right. All right, and ditto what George just said here. There's a lot of details that there can be acrimony. Fine, we can work it out. Expert committees, but basically, we don't want a threat on our border. Neutral country. Russia can be part of the guarantors for security. We can maybe get the Chinese on board as well. Okay, we need to go through the UN Security Council. All of these steps are doable. There should be no obstacle to getting the things that I just said done.
Right. No, I
It has
think it's right.
nothing to do about the nature of the regime in
Right,
Kiev and all
right,
of that. Russia's not. What Russia wants its money back, or that's been stolen from it.
right,
That's not going to be up for negotiation.
right,
Okay,
right. No,
you want to rebuild Ukraine? That's your business.
that's right. I think so. And I think that if they can make this about the issue of mutual security, I think Trump will be down for that. And he says, okay, fine, we don't have to start haggling over land, which, we can
No,
go on forever arguing about that. So if we can get it about security against, it says, the NATO, I mean, what does he care about NATO? I mean, that's not on his radar. It never has been, those NATO. So it's doable. And then that if Lavrov and Rubio meet, and then they work out that this is going to be the agenda. So what are they going to talk about in Budapest? Then I think that it's doable. And the point is what we agreed on yesterday, just to conclude, is Viktor Orban will be there. Orban is somebody who actually understands what this conflict is about. Trump probably only has a very hazy idea of what it's about. Orban understands it. And therefore, Orban will be there telling him, yeah, this is the key. This is the key to getting this done. And I think that's going to be really important, because Trump.
it's going to be really
respects him.
important. Optics are really important. We're going to have a table. One side is going to be the president of the United States. One side is going to be president of the Russian Federation. And at the end of the table, between the two, is going to be Viktor Orban. Wow.
That's
Hat tip, man. Hat tip.
Exactly. That's it. He made it. All right, Peter. I think we're done for today. Thank you very much, everybody who joined us. Really appreciate the time you spent with us. We will be back next Monday at the same time. And the tip jar. Now, this is the key, because the dogs are really mad. So this is they're not in a good mood. We talk about how Trump throws things around. The dogs, when they want to throw things around, they really throw things around. So tip jar, anything you've got, straight into it. No messing around. So thank you. We will be back next Monday at the same time. And then I do my solo live stream Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time. Please join me. See you soon. All the best. Bye-bye.